Yeah,
dark.
Oops.
Yep.
It's that time.
It's that time.
Thank you.
Everybody have a safe weekend.
Yeah.
Be careful. The 27th, the gates of Hades are opening.
Oh my gosh, I will mark it.
Well, be sure to take pictures.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good night, all.
Yeah.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. See how the trouble you started?
Join us here on Revolution Radio, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern on Studio B, for a politician, patriot, social savant, businessman, former investment banker, and Veterans Today columnist, Mike Harris. Listen to Mike as he exposes the corruption, sedition, and terrorism within our own government. He knows our system is flawed and that obstruction of justice is all too commonplace. His show, Short End of the Stick, pokes at this corruption with eloquent style. That's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Studio B for the Short End of the Stick with the man who should have been elected governor of Arizona, Mike Harris.
That's right here on Revolution Radio.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
Your body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move. Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting the endangered. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio!
Would be me, Wild Bill Samsel, your host of the Samsel Report. Join me for Wild Bill's Headline Roundup every Saturday night, right here on Revolution Radio.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
trouble.
Come on.
My kids are starving.
Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our Seed Pack Special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, Freedom Slip listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome, everybody. This is Rectify on the early morning of Saturday, July 26th, 2014. And we're about to roll into some reruns of previous shows, but I figured it's almost a good buddy of mine's birthday that passed, who was a great man. His name was Dr. Fred Bell. I did a lot of work with him, mostly computer stuff, IT stuff. But he was a more or less a great friend. We'd talk almost on a daily basis, just checking up on each other. I could ask him anything, learned a lot from the guy. But yeah, his birthday was August 10th, the day after my father's birthday. Both Leos, which is ironic. But what I'm going to play tonight for you all is an interview back from 2006. This was May 20th, 2006, and it's going to be my father being interviewed by Dr. Fred Bell. And this was basically because my father worked for the feds and for local governments as well as the military. But he was FAA and air traffic controller. So I figured this interview would be really pertinent for the time, with all these Boeing 777 things going on, just to show the characteristics and what can and what can't be done in the air with these planes, and how the technologies work as far as tracking them, and what we're being told compared to what the truth is. How do you lose a plane type of deal. So I'm going to go ahead and play this interview. It's about 45 minutes. I will take callers. We'll probably go half an hour in, and then we'll take some callers, and then we will play some more, probably about 10-minute segments. Take callers, and we'll talk about this stuff. But yeah, jot the number down. It's not our normal number. So I'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to get a pen or open notepad. The number here is going to be 562-912-3502. Again, 562-912-3502. And I thought I was also going to mention, I'm going to mention this. I had a motherboard crash the other night on my main production machine here, my broadcast studio machine. And it was ironic because I've been scratching my head with everybody doing these Skype updates, and now can no longer, add to group call without dropping the server. So I felt really lucky and blessed that hadn't happened to me. I wasn't forced to update. Well, before my motherboard crashed, I couldn't log in to Skype. It said, we logged you out because you're using an old version. After tons of research and to come to no point of any resolve, I said, okay, update me. So it wanted me to reboot first. So I said, okay, reboot. It rebooted, never came back online. It power cycled. I didn't get a power on self-test beep. The hard drive LED just stayed on like it was constantly active. I did all the testing, unplugged everything except memory and video. Same thing. Unplugged all video and memory, expecting beep code errors, nothing. Found a couple blown up capacitors on the motherboard, tossed it. Spent about 4 or 5 hours integrating, so I had a machine that works. So my whole point of this story is I don't know if I'm going to kick the server the first time I try to accept the call. But on to this interview. Dr. Fred Bell and my father, 9/11 talk with avionics. Here we go.
Welcome to Dr. Fred Bell's Health, Science, and Energy Show on May 20th, 2006. We're coming to the 0 hour of the seminar. We've still got a few late sign-ups. I don't know where we're putting people now, but I guess we've got that handled. The staff handles that. And tonight we're going to talk about the 9/11 cover-up with my guest, whose name is Pete. We've got to sort of keep last names out of this, and sometimes even the first names aren't real anymore. Pete has a strong background in air traffic control, military, and law enforcement. Hi, Pete. Are you there?
Hi, yes, Dr. Bell.
So how are you doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Enjoying the sun down here in SoCal?
Oh, it was a good day here in SoCal. Yes, it was.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you've done without getting too specific.
Well, I was, like I said, air traffic controller. There's only a one employer occupation, so obviously federal government. And until I got fired by President Reagan.
Yeah.
Didn't vote for him the second time. But and I saw some things on radar. I started out at a little airport up by LAX, and I moved to a bigger airport, and then went into radar. And, you know, I've seen some things on radar that we couldn't explain. The FAA at the time had a rubber stamped answer for that. It was anomalous propagation, i.e. false radar targets. But, you know, I know what I saw. But that's another story about, that goes into UFOs beyond 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, the 9/11 is really good. What we've done is we posted up on the website about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the original 9/11 footage, with the whole story of, you know, the cover-up and the pilot working with the military, and his plane being one of the hijacked planes who had a year ago or 2 years before that had participated in exercises that were about flying commercial aircraft into the World Trade Center. And then last week on Tuesday, the government re-released, claiming it was the first time, pictures of the IE missile 767 military jet flying into the Pentagon. Did you see that newest footage?
I saw the new footage. It's just as grainy as the footage that was leaked out on the internet 4 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't impress me. It didn't look like a 757, 767. You know, you really couldn't tell. Nothing was discernible as far as the image.
And the interesting thing is the hole in the building looked like what a cruise missile did to Slobodan Milošević's place when they hit that over in Europe a few years ago.
Yeah, well, Dr. Bell, before the building collapsed, you know, that wall showed an initial hole about the size of maybe a 757, but no discernible imprints from the wings and engines, and no wings and engines or landing gear were at the scene.
Right.
So, excuse me, let me walk inside here.
Okay.
But that surprised me right there. And as far as the footage, you know, why did they just release one tape, that grainy tape from the helipad? You know, where I've heard that the FBI had 85 different tapes from the Citgo gas station, the Virginia Department of Transportation, I-35, 395 cameras. You know, where are all those tapes that the FBI confiscated within 15 minutes of the crash?
Yeah, it's interesting that they were suddenly on the scene in 15 minutes, got all the tapes. But also, I guess the Hilton Hotel and some of the other hotels.
Oh, it was the Sheraton.
Get those?
The Sheraton.
Yeah. And you know, the other day on MSNBC, which is totally controlled by the government now, they said they were releasing the hotel tapes and everything. Well, I didn't see any of them. They said those were being released, but I didn't see any of that stuff.
Yeah, and ostensibly the excuse for withholding those tapes for the last 4 years was they didn't want to compromise the trial of
Moussaoui?
Moussaoui, yeah. Zacharias Moussaoui, yeah.
That's too funny.
Okay, well, now that he's sent to Colorado for the rest of his life, why aren't all the other 84 tapes being released?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see those.
And, you know, I can see not releasing, you know, Pentagon security cameras, but how about the Citgo gas station? How about the Sheraton? How about the I-395 tapes? You know, those have nothing to do with national security.
There have to be some tapes out there that they didn't get. I don't think they could have gotten all the cameras. Do you? There have to be a few others that are hidden away somewhere. Maybe we need to do some research, maybe find those tapes. We'll have to put that in the network and go looking. What do you think?
I think somebody would be a wealthy individual if they provided those tapes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but you know, that's one thing that right from day one that set me back as far as you know, possible government conspiracy. Number one. Number two, the fact that all 4 aircraft were hijacked and none of them set their transponders to 3100, which is the standard hijacking transponder code.
And what is it again?
3100.
Okay, so in other words, you being an air controller know all this stuff.
Well, every pilot knows that too.
Yeah.
That's not top secret information.
Right, I understand that.
And
so an airliner, if he goes hijack, he switches the transponder codes?
The 3100.
Okay.
And then that's if they're flying. If they're on the ground, they lower their flaps while they're taxiing. And then, you know, they ask them, you're squawking 3100, is this intentional, blah, blah, you know, and all that to confirm it.
Now, do you think the terrorists would have known?
No. These guys are too stupid to even fly a Cessna 172. I don't think there is one Arab on those planes. I mean, not one of them was on the passenger manifest list of all 4 aircraft. Number one.
Like Muhammad Atta was not on the passenger list.
Oh, but they found his passport.
Right, and that was the only thing they found at the World Trade Center, right?
Yeah. His passport, you know, undamaged.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, and then these guys leave their Quran in the car at Logan Airport.
Yeah, no, that Bible is like, you know, they're going to get their 72 virgins. They better have their passport with them.
And then, you know, another thing is, you know, both planes are what they call glass panel Boeings.
Right.
You know, fly by wire.
Right, I understand. Explain that a little bit.
Those incorporated technology that's typically referred to as home run, where they can be remote controlled from the ground.
Okay, now why do they do that anyway?
The intention for that was in case of a hijacking where they could manually take control from the ground, remote control.
Okay.
But, you know, our government or the Israeli Mossad or anybody else that had that capability could do that. And what
now I have a question for you. Now, if they had that capability, the hijackers could not override it once it was set, right?
That's correct. Well,
what happened in Pennsylvania then?
Anybody on the plane couldn't.
Huh?
Nobody on the plane could take over. No.
Once it's switched, you're done. You're a victim now to what's on the ground.
Yeah, and you know what 2 frequencies they use for that, Dr. Bell?
What?
There's 2 frequencies. They use the frequency that generates the transponder, the transponder, and the cockpit voice recorder.
Oh, so it's all the same thing.
Yeah, that's why when they took over remote control of the plane, it used the transponder frequency. So that's why they couldn't put out the 3100 code, the hijack code.
Oh, okay. So it went on remote control. Therefore, the transponders couldn't be turned on because they're all in the same mode.
They're already taken over. That frequency was already taken over on the plane.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That didn't show up in the newspaper.
Yeah, oh yeah. And in NORAD,
yeah.
Why don't they scramble and go up and look? And the pilots probably would have signaled, hey, we have no control of our aircraft.
Wow.
You know, I mean, NORAD, you know, to me, they dropped the ball big time.
Now, I heard on one of those recordings, the one that's up on the BBS radio site that Ryan helped me get, was one that was where they had all the airplanes that normally would be in NORAD control. All but 18 of them were out of the country that day, which is unusual, running missions in Canada and all kinds of places. And there was a recording where where they actually, I guess it was a phone recording where they did call in for a scramble, but they weren't sure if it was a real hijacking, and the pilots decided it wasn't a hijacking, they just shined it on. Did you hear that recording?
Yeah, well, coincidentally, they had military drills set for that same day, 9/11.
Okay.
So, you know, at first, they probably did that on purpose because there was confusion as to whether this was a drill or an actual incident. But, you know, Andrews Air Force Base, which is right outside of Washington, D.C., has jets capable of scrambling for interception.
Right.
And it was on their website until September 12th, 2001. They pulled it off their website that they had, you know, jets ready to scramble at all hours of the day. And they're only 15, 18 miles outside of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, Andrews is close. I've been there.
That's where Air Force One is stationed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But then all the planes that did scramble, they only reached a max speed of 450 knots when their top speed is like 1,850 knots.
They were flying at 450 knots?
They were going about 1/4 of their maximum speed.
So they were almost flying at a stall speed for those things.
Well, you're not going to catch a Boeing that's doing 500 knots.
Wow.
And plus, in 2001, you know, all these calls off Flight 93 and American Flight 77, cell phone calls.
Right.
Back in 2001, flying at altitude at speed, every time you get on a cell phone and try to use a cell phone at altitude, by the time it interrogates the cell phone site and handshakes with it, you're going to lose it and hit the next one.
Exactly, because you're going too fast. I have never been able to use, I've tried, I've never, in all the flights that I've ever been on, I've flown all over the world, never been able to use my cell phone once on a flight in flight.
Oh, maybe on final approach at 150 knots coming into LAX.
Yeah.
But not at 35,000 feet at 500 knots.
But they only put out a 10 milliwatts at 35,000 feet. I don't think they could reach the ground, could they? I mean, the cell phone. I don't think the signal would even get to the ground, would it?
It could. I mean, you're 30,000 feet, you're 6 miles up. You can get a cell phone tower.
What is the range on cell phones?
Well, you know, 6 to 10 miles, I think.
Okay, between the repeaters? Yeah,
but,
and it takes, I know, a little while to do a handshake.
I'm not really sure on that.
It's a gradual thing when you're going at 80 or 90 miles an hour in a car, or 70 or 60 or something.
Yeah, I mean, but when you're on the ground, it's all, you know, one dimension. You're hitting the closest cell phone tower. When you're at altitude, you're hitting like 3 or 4.
Exactly, I see your point.
So it's going to handshake and interrogate and not get the signal before it hits another one at speed. So to me, that's all propaganda.
Yeah. So what do you think happened to the actual people that were, obviously the people disappeared, and they were taken somewhere, right?
My personal opinion on that?
Yeah.
I think all 4 aircraft had ghost aircraft come up underneath them and take over for them.
Right.
And I think they're all forced to land in Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
And they all got on one plane and shipped out over the Atlantic.
And shoved off into the ocean somewhere.
Yep. Oh, not Columbus, Cleveland. Cleveland. Yeah.
Okay. So you obviously have, why would you choose Cleveland anyway, can you say?
Oh, well, a couple of the flights were right over Cleveland before they diverted.
Oh, okay. So they could have landed and had another flight in the line, and what would they do? Switch their transponder frequencies over and everything?
Exactly.
Or what?
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting.
I think, you know, it's. I mean, I don't know if it was our own government. It had to be our own government. If it wasn't the Israeli Mossad, I don't think the Israeli Mossad could do it by themselves.
Oh no, I don't think
they'd have to have, our own military involved.
Well, I did some viewing for him afterwards on Osama bin Laden, and I saw that he went up into China, up through Dushanbe and into China, and even in our thing on the website there, it says that the head of the CIA in that sector was visiting him a few days in the hospital where he was getting, some dialysis work or whatever was going on in his kidneys.
Yeah, the station chief that wasn't China, that was in Dubai.
Okay, right. No, I went to China later.
July of 2001, 2 months before 9/11.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's Osama bin Laden used to go by the name of Tim Osman.
He did?
Yeah, when he was over here.
That's interesting.
When he was over here being trained by our own CIA. He's a CIA operative, and what do they say about working for the company? Once with the company, always with the company, right?
Exactly.
But no, he was Tim Osman over here, O-S-M-A-N or O-S-S-M-A-N, two versions of his spelling.
Wow.
But that's Osama.
Okay.
And then of course about his family, and
they hauled them all out.
Yeah, after nobody else could fly around the country for 2 days.
Right, except them.
Except picking up all the Osama bin Laden family. Remember, the Bin Laden family. Yeah, and the relationship that the Bush family has with the Bin Laden family goes way back.
But what all kinds of relationships have they had? I know they had oil. Obviously, being in the oil business, George Sr. would have had a pretty good thing going with them.
Yeah, the oil business, the construction. Obviously, the Bin Ladens are like one of the biggest construction firms in the Middle East.
Right. So then he would have had a relationship with Halliburton too, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Well, Dick Cheney obviously did. But no, more specifically, the Carlyle Group out of Washington, which is a almost like a holding company, but they control a lot of these other construction oil companies around the world.
Yeah.
But in fact, George Hubert Walker Bush, Pres 41, is a member to this day of the Carlyle Group.
Yeah. Now I see him and Clinton hanging out. That's kind of interesting too. I guess Bill wants in now, right?
Well, Bill's pushing for Hillary, and the Bushes are pushing for Jeb. So.
I know. I think Jeb is probably. My opinion is that Jeb really doesn't want anything to do with it. He's happy down there in Florida, keeping out of. I think he's probably the outcast of the family because he's probably somewhat honest.
Yeah, but he's coming up to his term limit. He's got to get out of office. He can't run again.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. I'd like to keep him down in Florida.
He's got a job.
he can always level the elections. The next election, he can always regulate that for us.
Yeah,
he does.
With the voting machines. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, what do you think when the? So I've heard it said that, and it looks like that the planes. I heard a lot of on our video also that we have that Ryan helped me get was on our video. The people, the actual witnesses that I heard on the different local news people in New York when these planes were actually ramming the towers was that they didn't have any windows, and then they didn't seem like normal passenger planes. I heard that from several witnesses. Do you know much about that?
Not the window aspect, but I've seen a couple of videos, stills rather, of plane hitting the South Tower that had a pod on the bottom of the fuselage that wasn't on a normal 757. And then, if you look at the videos, in slow-mo, there's a flash just before impact.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, those things fire off pretty fast. Those things launch. It looks like they launched just about the time it was hitting. The nose was hitting the building when they were launching it almost.
Yeah, and then there's witnesses that came out of the basement area.
Right.
That claim there's explosions in the basement. And
right.
Witnesses saw a guy that was like burnt up coming up from the basement. Just
it set off charges down there because it looked to me like one of those. Like when the Sahara went down, or the controlled Sahara went down in Vegas, or any of those demolitions, they come down perfectly.
A controlled implosion, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what, there was a big demolition expert from, like, I think New Mexico that said that, like, the day or two after 9/11. And then they hushed him up pretty quick. But, also, who was that? One of the guys that just retired from the FBI. I can't recall his name right now, but he was in charge of security at the World Trade Center. It was his first day on the job was 9/11.
Wow, yeah. That was pretty interesting. Well, the FBI, you know, they weren't too effective in that, from what I heard, but I don't think they were allowed to be.
And well, you know that Israeli instant messaging company, Odigo?
Yeah.
Well, they instant messaged several Israeli employees 2 hours before the attack and warned them of the attack, 2 hours ahead of time.
Right.
That's all documented. Now, how did the Israelis know that 2 hours ahead of the attack?
Well, you know, the Israelis, to me, have always had a conspiracy in all of this stuff. It's just interesting that they would be involved in a Tim Osman CIA NSA deal to start. You know, I noticed that there was a lot of rhetoric in the conversation referring to Pearl Harbor, and that we need to do another Pearl Harbor.
Operation Northwoods. You know anything about that?
Is that what that was called?
Back in 1961, Operation Northwoods.
Okay.
That's where our military came up with a plan to blow up a civilian jetliner off the coast of Florida and blame it on the Cubans.
Right.
Or that was one of the plans. Or another one was to blow up a naval vessel and blame it on the Cubans. Another one was to shoot down or blow up John Glenn taking off in Mercury and blow it up on the Cubans. I'm blaming on the Cubans. Those were turned down.
Today they blame it on extraterrestrials, I think.
But you know.
So what happened down in Pennsylvania? What actually hit? What did they find there? Anything? They didn't find much there, right? Just a hole in the ground.
Just a hole in the ground. I think it was shot down.
That one. That's what I'd heard too. Now, the day that was all going on, I heard from one of my friends in the government that day, and he said that that there was possibly that one was shot down.
There was
found landing gear and stuff on that one.
Yeah, but you know, Dick Cheney that day claimed that they gave orders to shoot it down, but that was 30 minutes after it crashed.
Oh, okay.
But you know, the fact is they found debris 8 miles away from the crash site.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen if it was crashed. That could only be a high altitude explosion.
Yeah, or something happening high altitude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Debris doesn't fly 8 miles. On impact.
Because if it's but I don't know what it was at 35. If it's 6 miles high, and it gets hit and it comes apart, parts are going to drop it for a long different direction.
And witnesses spotted what they thought was a F-16 circling overhead too.
Oh, okay. So they shot that one down then, but still, you think that one actually had legitimate passengers in it or not?
I don't think there was Todd Beamer going, "Let's roll." I think that was all propaganda.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't think you make cell phone calls. You know, and the one guy was in the bath in the head on the plane making a cell phone call.
Well, it seems to me that's surrounded in aluminum. I don't think it's like a cage, it's a Faraday cage. I don't see how the small amount of radiation coming out of a cell phone antenna would even work. Even on the ground, when I've used cell phones in planes, sometimes they don't work in the aisles. You have to stick them up by the window.
By the window, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was all.
And most anywhere in the plane, even on the ground, they don't work. I mean, unless there's a lot of windows, but I mean.
I think, that was just the story, the line we're being fed.
Yeah.
For the average citizen to swallow up as the truth.
Now, going back to the Pentagon, they only found that one engine, not the compressor, but the turbine, which is the back end of a jet engine. They found that inside the Pentagon, right?
And that wasn't even from a 757. That was a 737 compressor or engine part that they produced.
It was a 737.
Yeah, it wasn't even a 757.
Yeah, because I was trying to do some research on that, and I know that the 757 one's a little bit bigger, and there should have been two of them.
Yeah, well, why wasn't there any impact marks from the wings and engines?
Yeah, I know there weren't any at all. And those cables, there was a bunch of cables.
Would just punch a hole. But a 757 would have, obviously wing impact and engine impact. The engines are on each side of the wing on that plane. And they would have been on the outside of the building. If not, they would have penetrated the wall, and you'd see the marks.
Yeah.
There was no evidence of that.
And then there was also, I don't know, the people that, to the audience out there, go on to the Dr. Fred Bell's part of the show section. You'll see these videos we're talking about. There's video 1, 2, and 3. And you'll see a bunch of cables, big cable rolls, that were sitting right there and outside the building. And the plane would have had to hit those somehow, too, which it seemed to miss them. And because those things were, about 12 feet tall, and they were sitting right by the building where and they didn't even get hit.
Right, and we're expected to believe that a guy that couldn't even fly a Cessna 172 in flight school did a 270 degree turn, descending from 7,000 feet to ground level in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
going 500 knots, 50 feet off the ground just prior to impact, and the guy can't even fly a Cessna 172.
Yeah,
I've been a pilot for 30 years.
Yeah, yeah. I've been. You're a pilot. Are you a pilot?
Yes.
Okay, so am I. What do you fly?
Single engine land.
Okay.
I mean, the biggest I've flown is
land, twin engine, turbocharged, like MU2 Moonies and stuff.
Yeah.
And in my experience, and I had some friends that had P-51s and that go pretty fast. My experience.
What?
This is my experience.
P-51.
Even in a small plane.
B-52. You mean?
Huh?
B-52.
Yeah.
You said B-51.
Yeah, no. I fly P like Paul.
P-51, a Mustang.
Yeah, Mustang.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know this for a fact. I've never flown one of those, but I know for a fact. I used to fly like a small little, like a 150 or 172, pretty close to the ocean. And that's only flying at 100 miles, about 100 knots or so, 120 miles an hour. And I know this: in a little plane, which is a lot easier to control than a big one. A big one. I know for a fact it's like flying a dump truck. You make a big change on the stick and it gradually, it's like flying a dump truck. That's, even twin engines are like that. And you've probably flown a few and you know they're not like flying a little plane.
Well, the biggest plane I've flown, I flew a Lockheed L-1011 for about 45 minutes.
Well, then you know. I've never flown one of those, only in the simulator.
We used to ride dump seat in the cockpit, and I sat right seat and took the controls on a flight coming back from New Orleans to LAX.
Wow.
I flew up from about western New Mexico State to almost Palm Springs.
Right.
And, indiscernible banks left and right, descents and ascents, indiscernible passengers. We had 435 people behind us. But, it is more like driving a truck.
Yeah, it's been my experience in a simulator, and even with the larger twins that I've flown. And that means if you're on the ground, let's say at 200 knots, I don't think you could you couldn't regulate a plane like that at 50 feet. You wouldn't have that, you don't have that kind of control. Unless you're damn good. You know what I mean? Like military, really good. Because they're going to move up and down with the air currents at 50 or 60 feet, I think. Am I right or wrong?
2,000 or 3,000 hours of fighter experience.
Yeah.
Not some guy from the Middle East that can't even fly a Cessna 172.
Yeah.
It's just not plausible.
Because I remember my friends in their P-51, they had a club. And one of them actually, one of them Ed Zimmer was my friend with that, who I worked with, his buddy, him and Ed Zimmer and 13 guys owned one. That guy put the plane in. And I was flying one time with Ed, and I said, Ed, let's go down close to the ground, and because he was flying it. And I said, let's just cruise along the ground, and just, I want to do 300 knots at 75 feet. And he said, forget it. And I said, why? He says, you can't control it. You get one little buffet, one little anything, and you're going to be in the ground in this thing. Like 100 feet is as low as he'd go, and that's it. I mean, and that's not enough control, and that's a lot easier to control in one of these big trucks like this 1011. So, I mean, precision flying, I don't see how it's possible to hit that thing like right on the nose. I mean, that's almost impossible. I mean, people have no idea. At 500 miles an hour, right off the deck, you'd have to line that up 10 miles out and get it really aimed properly to even come close. And that's if you're an experienced pilot. That's my take on that.
That's a very accurate take on that, too.
Yeah, 5 to 10 miles. Because I know in the simulators I've flown, if you make a right turn or a left turn, and I think they don't do more than 45 degrees on a turn in a commercial airliner, right? Like we do 60s in private, but I don't think they do 45, right?
They do a standard bank like 30 degrees.
30 degrees, okay. At 30 degrees, if you don't keep your nose up and keep your speed up, you can drop 500 feet in those things like nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll bet you at 10 degrees you can drop 300 or 400 feet if you don't have your nose up. Even a slight turn, if you don't know what you're doing, that nose is going to drop.
This guy did a 270-degree turn going from 7,000 feet to ground level in less than 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a spiral.
Yeah.
And then ends up level 50 feet off the ground, going into the side of the Pentagon.
It ain't going to work. And that's exceeding the plane capability. The inertia of the plane wouldn't let it do that. You'd have to level it out over a period of miles. I mean, like a final approach. That's a long, long deal. I mean, the final approach is 10 or 20 miles in one of those, isn't it? I mean, I'm asking you. I don't know
what the as far as the strength of the wings on a 757 are, but if you do a coordinated turn, it's not going to put stress, G-forces on the wings.
No. But my saying is, if your speed isn't right on a coordinated turn, you're going to drop the nose, and you're going to lose a lot of altitude getting it fixed again.
Oh yeah, you have to.
That's my point.
Trim up there.
Inexperienced pilot typically does that. When I used to learn how to fly, I never kept the nose up. I was always losing 300 or 400 feet in my turn, especially in a 60-degree or something turn. I'd lose a lot of altitude until I learned how to keep the nose up. You got to compensate for with the controls. You got to pull.
I never had that problem, Dr. Bell.
You what?
I sold it in 4.5 hours too.
Did you? You were lucky. I had to go 17 hours before I soloed. I wasn't that good. I was actually afraid of it for a while. I don't know why. But then when I learned to fly gliders, I had the opposite problem. You got to keep the nose down.
You can't get the plane on the ground.
It's the opposite.
It won't come down. Yeah, you got to put the speed brakes up.
Yeah, so it was opposite flying gliders. But I mean, people, the average American public, and we're getting technical, but the average American public does not realize, and I'm glad you're a pilot. I didn't even know you're a pilot. Does not realize that when you start getting down close, I'd say within 300 or 400 feet of the ground in any type of aircraft, I don't care what it is, even a Mooney Cadet, which is very easy to fly, you better have some flying skills. I mean, when you say like 200 or 300 feet is pretty much, you better have flying skills. I mean, flying along in a straight line, you better have some flying skills.
Oh yeah. Mooney pilots, they suck up the gear before they're a wingspan off the runway.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. So that's what people don't realize. So what do you think hit the Pentagon? What's your take on it?
I think it was a cruise missile myself.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And a cruise missile would completely disintegrate the engine because the engine would fly right into the bomb part,
right? Yeah.
So
now, as far as the World Trade Center, I think both those were modified Boeing 757s. I don't think they're the planes that took off from Logan Airport,
Yeah.
I think they're switched at the time they diverted.
Yeah, nobody seemed to really pay much attention to this thing until after they got past Columbus. Yeah. I mean, no attention from the news that I got was paid attention to these flights until they passed. They were out of Logan Field quite a ways before people, when people historically go back and trace this, even in the regular media, I don't think there was really much acclaim made until they were a little ways out. Was there at all?
Yeah. Plus, the fact that none of them were on the passenger manifest list, not one of the 19 were on any of the 4 flight manifest lists. At a time when you have to show photo ID to get on a plane. To me, that's highly suspicious right there from day one.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Remember a few months later they showed video surveillance camera footage of supposedly Muhammad Atta walking through Logan International. Now, where did they come up with that?
Yeah, well, that was probably
then his passport.
Or something.
They found the day after the crash.
So when in all those, well, they obviously found nothing in those things. I mean, they didn't even find the engines in those planes because of the way they came down, right?
Yeah. And then that's a crime scene. The World Trade Center debris was a crime scene. Why did they take all the steel and ship it overseas almost immediately?
Yeah, that's interesting.
They didn't test it for any, explosive residue or anything.
Yeah. I remember they hauled it out on barges right away.
Yeah. So, and I think Charlie Sheen's doing a good thing, asking all these questions.
Yeah.
He's out there, making mainstream news about it.
I need to get him on the show at some point.
Yeah, and actually, I heard that CNN was shopping around for somebody to debunk Charlie Sheen, and the people they were trying to get all turned him down.
Yeah,
they're looking for somebody to try to debunk him.
Well, what Don and I have found, and who runs BBS, he's the guy that called you, and he's still sitting in the background, is that we found that, well, I pretty much knew it anyways. I've done radio shows now for 30 years, but it was a big shock back in the 70s when I started doing radio shows. It's a big shock to me where certain things I would say seemed to really I used to do British broadcasting, CBC, Canadian broadcasting, and NBC, and CBS. And, though I did a lot of main shows in television and radio in the old 70s when I started doing it. I was young then. And I noticed that they used to ask me what I wanted to cover, and they would cringe if I would start going off into where I wanted to go politically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I began, this is how I kind of woke up to the fact that the media is highly controlled by the government. The FCC just comes in and nails them.
I never believed in propaganda by our government until I went on strike as air traffic controller August 3rd, 1981.
Yeah.
August 4th, the media is showing pictures of Air Force enlisted guys in uniform walking into like LAX Tower.
Right.
Like, fear not, public. The Air Force is here to protect and save. But a fully certified journeyman controller can come from JFK Airport in New York and go to LAX. It would still take him 6 months to 9 months, maybe a year, before he's qualified to work traffic at LAX Tower.
Really?
Yeah, you don't just walk in and take over.
Wow.
So that was the first time I experienced propaganda in our press. And I'm sure it wasn't the last.
No. So, that original tower that was over there, not the new one, but the old one?
Yeah.
Black Tower. Was that made, does that have some kind of vents on it, or flaps on it to shut down, close off in case of a bomb blast or something?
No.
Huh?
No towers have that.
Okay, I didn't know.
The centers do.
There was some strangeness. So where were you at during that strike? Where were you working?
I was at Coast Approach, which was the radar facility on the now closed El Toro Marine Corps Air Station. But we handled all the flights. It used to be Long Beach Approach and El Toro Approach combined, and they called it Coast Approach. But we handled all the radar flights between San Diego and LA.
Oh, okay. So you were
arrivals from Mexico, South America going into LA, departures from San Diego going out to Hawaii or Japan, Orient, and everything in Orange County. Arrivals, departures from Long Beach, Orange County airports, Marine Tustin, El Toro, Fullerton. So it was Seal Beach VOR, actually, which is located at Los Alamitos.
Right.
Is the busiest VOR in the world.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There's more air traffic flying over that VOR than any other, navigation aid in the world.
And so does Victor 35, that approach to LAX, does that go over El Toro, or is that further north?
Victor 35. No, we had Victor 64, Victor 25.
Okay.
Victor 8.
Okay. What's Orange County? Do you know?
What is it?
What's the approach number for that?
SN8. What do you mean, the approach number?
Well, the Victor number. I mean, the flight number, the pathway. What do they call it? Do you know?
Well, it's an ILS approach to runway 19 right.
Okay, 19 right.
Yeah. 19 right that's the 5,700 foot runway. The other one's only 2,700 feet.
Yeah, I missed the days of the El Toro Marine shows with the Blue Angels and the stealth aircraft.
The last 9 years that they had the air shows, I had commanding generals VIP passes. I was sitting Air Show Center, just left of Air Show Center. The Blue Angels' wives were sitting Air Show Center. We were sitting 10 feet to their left, front row.
That was fun. I remember when they used to bring the stealth aircraft in?
I saw the stealth come in. I used to go there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and Sunday.
You went every day.
I went every day. I saw the stealth come in on Wednesday afternoon, and I saw it take off on Sunday afternoon. I brought my own UHF scanner and listened to the frequencies. I listened to Blue Angels, which they don't disclose their frequencies. for obvious security reasons.
Yeah, somebody starts jamming those, they're in the world of hurt.
Yeah, but I brought my scanner and scanned them and caught them. So I had my scanner there at the air show, listened to the Blue Angels doing their calls.
Oh, cool.
And Ryan was, air show center with me too.
Oh, that's fun. But anyway, that's real interesting. So you've had quite a background in aviation. I didn't realize you were this versed in that too.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of everything.
Well,
Dr. Bell.
So have you got any other comments about 9/11? Why do you think they released this latest information? Another area I wanted to go into, maybe Don might want to pitch in, is how easy, I guess. Don, are you there? Hello, Don. I guess he's back there.
Don's in paradise.
Huh? Yeah, I was trying to see if Don was still listening. I had a question for him. Anyway, Brian was telling me how easy it is to Photoshop, and that seems to be what the government does. They take this video stuff and they Photoshop it. In other words, change all the real stuff so it looks really, authentic, and then they re-release it. And I guess on this newest footage, they added some flashes and different colors to it. Do you know much about that?
I haven't really compared what they released this week to what came out on the internet 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It looks pretty much the same to me, which is really nothing.
There was 6
a blur
frames.
and an orange fireball.
Yeah. And if we figure the frame rate of those cameras, you would be able to easily slow it down and get several images of an airplane.
Now, those cameras were only 2 frames a second.
Oh, they're slow.
2 frames a second, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, typical video is like 30 frames a second.
Right, that's what I thought.
No, those cameras are only 2 frames a second.
Because they're surveillance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so they're really slow.
But not all surveillance cameras are that slow. I mean,
but what if you sped the thing up then?
That Virginia Department of Transportation I-395 cameras were probably 25, 20, maybe 30 frames a second. That's probably streaming video. Where are those images?
Yeah, that's a good point.
The Citgo gas station security cameras are probably 2 or 3 frames a second. But where are those videos? Why aren't we seeing any of those?
Well, if with the slow cameras, wouldn't you you probably couldn't, because, I don't know, at 500 miles an hour, and
you'd see something, but why aren't we even being able to see those?
Yeah, I know.
Why did the FBI come in within 15 minutes, in all cases, within 15 minutes after the crash, confiscated all those videos under the guise of national security?
Well, they had to be ready and staged to do that.
Oh, yeah. It's like way back at, Pan Am Flight 103.
Right.
FBI was there within 45 minutes. Well, at the time, the closest FBI base was in London, like a 3-hour drive. How'd they get there in 45 minutes,
Yeah, that's pretty quick even for that.
Yeah.
I was booked on that flight.
You're kidding.
Yeah, that one coming out of Germany going here.
Pan Am Flight 103?
Went down in Scotland. I was booked on that. I was getting my wife at the time, her
Lockerbie
card. And we were booked. That was a Saturday night flight. I remember that. So we decided I wanted to get back to America for Christmas, so we took the Friday night flight instead and canceled our ticket.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was booked on that one.
Jeez.
Went down in Lockerbie. Yeah. Talk about karma. That was some interesting karma.
That is.
Yeah, I should have kept the damn reservation, because I had the reservation. It was fax, came out of the fax.
You sell that ticket on eBay, huh?
I was booked on that puppy. And then my half-brother, who's in law enforcement, was booked on the first 1954 crash of TWA into the Grand Canyon. Remember that? I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yeah, it was a Constellation.
Yeah, Connie.
Super Connie.
My brother Jimmy, who's the Redondo Beach, half-brother Jimmy, who's a Redondo Beach narcotics officer today, was booked on that flight, but he got sick at the last minute on the way to the airport, and so he didn't want to fly. He had a really bad cold, and he thought his eardrums would be screwed up. So just at the airport, they turned around. He lived in Inglewood. It wasn't that far to LAX. And they turned around, took him back, and then the plane went down.
Gee.
So we had a couple close calls in the family,
Oh.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So Did you go out and buy a lottery ticket that night?
No. I've never done much with lottery tickets. I never was much at it. I probably should. Maybe I'd win something. Who knows? Yeah.
So, what's your theory on 9/11? I mean, who do you think is really behind it?
Well, it's because I was involved in some remote viewing later, and I pretty much tracked Bin Laden up into, after this is after Tora Bora, out of the area, got into some trouble for my accurate prediction, which I thought was accurate, and later on, because everybody was telling me that he was dead. That was what I was supposed to believe. And I wasn't going for it. I knew he wasn't dead. But that's what everybody was telling me to believe at the time, and I just wasn't going for it. And so I don't really know the true political nature of that, because I was concentrating more in those days on the ET cover-ups in the Area 51 stuff, and I was highly involved in all of that, and not really getting into this terrorist stuff. That's one area I was weak in at the time. So I didn't really understand the relationship, but it has to do, I'm sure, with the New World Order, and I know that he has family somehow, and they could have got him a long time ago, and they don't want to get him. They can't afford to get him. They absolutely cannot afford to bring this guy down, because he would probably it would be too dangerous. Number one, I don't think he's got enough guts to kill himself. He'd be taken alive, and then they couldn't shut him up, so they'd have to kill him anyway.
Yeah, I think if he showed up in court, they'd divulge too much stuff that the Bush family doesn't want revealed.
Yeah, and other families.
Yeah.
Because when I got into, I do a lot of shows on drug cover-ups and Paperclip, where they brought Operation Paperclip, where they brought people over from Germany at the end of World War II, and IG Farben, which later became Merck Industries, which later became LaRoche Industries, to do all these Tamiflus and all these inoculations. These inoculations, most of the newer ones, like these viral inoculations, either contain piperidine or cyclohexane, all ingredients of a mind control agent called phencyclidine, called PCP. There's piperidine, cyclohexane, and some other ingredients that make ketamine and PCP, angel dust. And these were drugs that were originally developed at Surly Labs. So I did a lot of research on the families, the money transactions, drug companies, how the satellites that were put in orbit to create certain vibrations that cause psychological misbehaviors in human beings, thereby making the drug companies flourish. Done a lot of new information I'm getting back into now is implants. There's a lot more implants that are they're pulling out of people again. Implants that work on the neurological energy, the electricity from the nervous system.
The implants implanted by whom?
Well,
ET?
Some of them are joint extraterrestrial intelligence in cooperation with an NSA, and I've seen programs that are directed to make people do bad things while they're under the influence, so that strong legislation can come in.
Like Columbine?
Yeah, like Columbine, and like Austin, Texas, the Whitney guy down there who killed a bunch of people. 14 of them before he was shot. He had 2 implants in him. They do a lot of testing on the implants before they remove them from people. Oftentimes in their arms they find them. No scarring going in, but scarring coming out. They have a radio frequency output, but as soon as they disconnect them from the central nervous system, then they no longer have a radio frequency output. So there's a lot of this going on right now as we speak. The removal that is going on, and they've been implanted. So I've been working in those fields quite a bit lately here as of late.
Yeah, you were speaking about IG Farben earlier. Did you realize that Hillary Rodham Clinton's father was a financial backer of that company?
No, I didn't know that, but I do know that the backers of that company financed Hitler. That I do know. I didn't know that the Rodham family empire came. So I'm not surprised.
Rodham family and Prescott and Prescott Bush also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And also Pope John Paul II, that just passed away a year and a half, 2 years ago?
Right.
He was a Polish chemical salesman, World War II.
Oh, okay.
He sold cyanide to the Nazis.
That's interesting.
After the war, he sought refuge in the Catholic Church and became a priest, and he became the youngest bishop in 1958. But
interesting.
Basically, he sought refuge in the Catholic Church to keep from being tried as a war criminal.
Yeah, no, I can believe it's amazing, isn't it? And he was probably a pretty ballsy pope. I mean, I really studied his life, not in great detail, but in a lot of detail. And I think he really was trying to purify himself from something that happened in his past, because he was very devoted the rest of his life.
Yeah. Well,
and he kept his mouth shut about all that stuff too.
Well, the only things you hear in the mainstream media is that he worked for a chemical company.
Yeah.
Nothing beyond that.
Yeah, I never knew exactly what he did. So you've done some research on him too, then.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the new pope?
I think he's got ties to the Nazis.
Yeah. Well, I always heard that the Vatican had some pretty strong underworld ties and had some to do with the black box money that comes over here to the drug trade. And that the Vatican handles over $800 million to $1 billion a year. That's quite a bit of money.
I bet they tried to suppress that movie that just came out, the Da Vinci Codes.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Well, I heard that the Bible was basically rewritten about 300 AD.
Right.
To take out exactly what the Da Vinci Code is alluding to, that Jesus did have a family.
Well, I've heard similar things too.
Oh, I was just going to say, folks, gosh, what a wonderful interview, but we have another one coming up here.
Okay.
So we got to wind her down.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that was nice having you on here tonight, Pete. And
all right. So we're back here. I'm going to just play another clip. Everybody wants to hear some more Dr. Bell, so it's kind of a memorial for his birthday. It's coming up this week, or a week and a half. So I just wanted to put out some memories. And this one's going to be on electronic harassment. Let me find a date here so we can get this on record. Again, this is Rectify, host of the Gray Zone Radio here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, number one, 100% listener-supported talk radio broadcast station on the planet. We probably even have some listeners on the moon, if not Mars. But, yeah, let me find this clip here for everybody. Electronic harassment warfare. By the way, he did a lot of work on that. He was a kid genius, brilliant electronic engineer, brilliant physics scientist, brilliant quantum mechanics and quantum energy entanglement and science expert. The guy knew his stuff. He was a genius. Rays of Truth, Crystals of Light by Dr. Fred Bell. I definitely recommend that book. You can still find it. It's called Rays of Truth, Crystals of Light. But yeah, here we go. So electronic harassment warfare. And this was actually only, 2011. So yeah, it was the same year that he died. But here we go. Enjoy. Can't do that one. That was from a Coast to Coast show. I didn't realize. I do have ones that have not been broadcast. I just need to be more organized here. But let me see. I will grab one. I do have plenty of a library. I used to set up all his equipment, do his website, which wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, but it worked. Let's see here. I remember a night he called me at like 11:30 on a weekday. I was just about to go to sleep. I didn't want to answer the phone, and I decided to answer it. Hey, Dr. Bell. Hey, how's Ryan doing? Good, good. How's Dr. Bell doing? Oh, man, the website's down. No emails working. What's going on? This is right after he released his latest book, which the title slips my mind right now. But it was calling out basically all the corruption within the political arena, just straight up, just calling them out with all the data from all the friends he had. I'm thinking of the name. That's another good book. But because of the release of this book on his website, the upper echelon of the black government or cabal actually took down his entire server, which was off-site. You know, we were paying company like GoDaddy or what have you. It wasn't GoDaddy, but, you know, a hosting company for the e-commerce side and the web hosting and the email hosting, and they just shut it all off. And before I got a hold of anybody, well, I got a hold of some low-level, you know, tier 1 techs and such, and they're scratching their heads, and they escalated me. They scratched their heads, escalated me. They didn't know why it was down. Well, while I'm on hold waiting for the next tier tech, I, you know, decide to look in, I do a who is search, you know, on the domain name, get the IP address. I'm like, maybe it's just the DNS that's been yanked, because, you know, government workers aren't that smart. You know, if they want to cut something, they take the shortcut. So I pinged the IP address after I did a who is lookup, and sure enough, I was getting a reply. So I went ahead and did an FTP file transfer protocol connection established and started downloading all of his data onto my computer. And that took hours and hours and hours. And during these hours, I just talked to all these bureaucrats, you know, sending emails. I went all the way up to the ICANN, the ICANN, which is basically the cops of the internet. And I got an email response. And this is after. Finally, I emailed this guy after I made sure I had all the data backed up, all the e-commerce, everything, you know, ready to go to another server. And this guy, I finally, you know, I sent him this email. I said, I know exactly what you guys did there. You guys are dumb. You should have, you know, killed the entire server, the IP address and everything, except you just took down the DNS forwarding of Paradigm.com. Oops. I got an entire backup. And, oh yeah, man, within seconds, like 30 seconds, that IP address could no longer be pinged. But I had him back online by 9 o'clock the next morning with the new server, the e-commerce back up and running, his new book out there. I'm going to find the name of that book, but let me give you guys something. I'm tired, and I just wanted to play some Dr. Bell, because he came up, kind of rang a bell in my head. Rang a bell, Dr. Bell. So, and it's his birthday this month, so this is for all the Leos. Happy birthday, Hawk, by the way. Nighthawk, owner of the station. They're all partying. Today's the first day of the big party. That's going down in Kentucky. So, yeah, Kentuckying it. Kentucky Fried Chicken. But they're in a dry county, so be careful with your alcohol, people. The bureaucrats want your money. They need it. They need it. It justifies their existence. Let's see here. Okay, let's just go random. I don't know what this is. We'll find out. I'm going to keep talking before I air it. No, that one's not going to work either. Okay. Yeah, visit us. We have a chat room, freedomslips.com. Click on the chat button. There's usually 40, 50 people in there, just all talking either this or that, whatever's going on Studio A or B, or just talking about what have you. It's a good community. It's moderated very lightly. Nobody seems to get out of line. You don't get the typical influx of trolls like you get at other intellectual radio sites or forums. Let's see. Now we'll play this one. Here we go.
Our quick break.
Okay,
and when we come back, I want to talk to you. Yes, indeed, I do want to talk to you more about your book, The Inside Track. I've done a little bit of research here. We tried to get it out to me here in the bottom of the world in New Zealand, but there just wasn't enough time, so I had to do my homework, Doctor.
Okay, very good.
So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stick around, everybody's Badlands Radio. It is, of course, on Tuesday night. Right. And of course, you can send me an email, CaptainJack@WPRTradio.com. We'll be back after this. On the agenda, that was not one of the subjects for discussion, saying Libya is under a UN-mandated arms embargo. The Secretary of State in the iTunes app, who critics that
the Superman government and the former Soviet Union countries, all with the permission of the U.S. State Department.
Yes.
That's one device, and up here we have a Project Echelon, which monitors, your rate.
All right. It's called The Inside Track. That's the name of the book. The Inside Track. That's what caused them to bring down his website, because it called out Bush and his entire clan. It called out every little detailed thing and brought it to the surface. So The Inside Track. That was Dr. Bell's last writing before he passed.
Which I can explain, which are millimeter wave systems that have pinpoint laser accuracy, that from outer space can pinpoint a human being after being picked up on these, signature clusters. But there's several other things. It's just silent sounds is just one method. There's the subway systems that are in place. There's so much other stuff that's going on. The subway systems in New York, England, and I don't know, probably maybe in your country too if you have subways, but I mean, there's so many other things that we can talk about that do all this.
Yes. It is interesting. Given the CCTV technology that is being put in to use in the UK, in the past, they would lock in on a subject's face, and they would manually track the individual through all of their different networks of CCTV cameras. Now they no longer have to do that. It automatically does it, yes?
Yeah, and to add to that, they use the satellite, this high frequency, the gigahertz region, to zero down on a person. Like if you're in a big store, like I don't know, over here would be May Company in England. I don't know what store it would be in, but if you're in a big store, they can find your signature cluster, but they can't identify you because there's too many people in the store. They haven't quite got there yet. But when you walk out of the store, hit the street, those street cams have got you. And you're on the air. That's how it works. They know when you're going out the store, whatever door it is, there'll be a street cam, and boom, you're on the air.
Yes, indeed. So what evidence have you found from individuals being electronically harassed through these new systems? What are the differences between the two other than having to be in close proximity?
Well, you mean the psychological symptoms?
Yes.
Okay. First thing I find in everybody is depression. I see it so much. Why depression? Because they can use these SSRI drugs, serotonin, selective reuptake inhibitor drugs, of which there's Effexor, there's so many of them, and those are all laced with certain drugs, primarily all the Effexor, Prozac, all these drugs are laced with three chemicals: cyclohexene, cyclohexane, and piperidine. What are those? Well, guess what? Back when I was stationed at an Army base in the 60s and billeted there, early 60s, like I got to see how they made angel dust, which was made up of piperidine, cyclohexane. So in Effexor and Prozac and all these other drugs, which all have a limited side effect of homicidal ideation, kill somebody, kill yourself, as a side effect. I worked with the school systems up in Columbine. I worked with some of the people that Mark Taylor, for example, was on my show, the radio show. He was shot 7 times by Dylan Clevo. These kids were on Effexor and these different drugs. So what happens is with these satellite systems, first of all, you get depression, shortening attention span, inability to sleep, insomnia. tingling of the legs and arms. It's just a host of symptoms. Unable to concentrate on a book when you're reading it, your thoughts drift up somewhere else. When you're a kid, you could read a book. Now you can't. And electronic devices around them have a tendency to break or fix themselves. So it affects the environment too.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I was just talking with an individual just a few days ago about exactly those symptoms.
Yeah.
Oddly enough.
I work with John Hall. Have you had Dr. John Hall on your on your program yet?
Sometime back, yes.
Okay, so he works with me. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it is really fascinating. Now, you said that you have started developing, or you have been developing, ways of defending yourself against these, yes?
Yeah, since about 35 years ago. Once I realized that I was one of the contributors to this problem in the first place, from the work that I did in the aerospace, all the different industries that I worked in, but unconsciously. Like when I was at Aeronetics, we worked on the ILAS, which was a 6 billion watt laser system. Little did I know it would become a weapon in Star Wars later. I didn't know that. I was just working on this cool laser. I was a young guy. And I worked over at Hughes. Spent a lot of time at Hughes Aircraft because they were my clients. And over there, I work with their facilities are all over, Los Angeles, Fullerton, and around the country. And, in those places, everything is compartmentalized. So one group in Hughes doesn't know what another group is doing. But being the consulting engineer for all the groups, guess what? I got to see the big picture. You see what I'm saying? And so finally I realized what was going on. I started developing countermeasures.
Right. We honestly, radio frequencies and radio waves are around us. One of the subjects that I wanted to get into, just because it coincides with current events, there's something that I had found very interesting. Every now and again, I will go through the HARP research data to see exactly what stations were transmitting, when they were transmitting, the frequencies they were transmitting on, or how much power they were actually transmitting, and of course, what other stations they were transmitting in conjunction with. And I did a little bit of research into the dates of their last transmissions and kind of connecting them to the earthquakes, such as the earthquake here in Christchurch, New Zealand, and of course the one in Japan. I don't necessarily believe that HARP had a direct connection with the earthquakes, of course, although what I do find very interesting is that on the dates of the quakes, a couple of days before and of course after, but the day of, they put out a hell of a lot of energy, especially on the date of the Japan quake. What that has to do with the connection or not? Do they? Is there a connection there between HARP and the recent earthquakes?
Yeah, there is. I have to explain earthquakes in general first, and then I have to explain HARP in general. So I've got, you're asking me to approach two programs. Let me do HARP first. Okay, HARP is set up to generate microwaves to do X-raying on the far side of the equator. Now, what is X-ray? Well, if we're looking at Saddam Hussein, he was north of the equator, of course, but around the Earth, around the curvature of the Earth, we're looking for a bunker. We're looking for something underground, hidden nuclear labs in Iran, those kind of things. We have to X-ray that. That's the idea. So what happens is radio frequencies line of sight. If you shoot a beam from Alaska down to Iraq or Iran, you're not going to get there because the Earth's going to get in the way because it's round, not flat as previously believed. So anyway, they put at 450 miles of altitude, they put what's called a virtual antenna. And that is that they heat up the atmosphere, and a microwave will bend with heat at certain frequencies. It's very easy to do. It's like a lens. It's a virtual lens. So then they send up gigawatts of power to hit this lens, reflect down below the equator or clear across the globe, and go down underground, a mile or two with this X-ray machine. It's like like getting a chest X-ray on steroids, except they can go down a mile underground. You don't really want to be in the path of that. People that are get burned up. Okay, yeah. So then what happens is the reflection, the information, the intelligence that's coming cannot, go straight back. It doesn't come back the way it's transmitted. It has to go into space from where it was hit. So that's what these Clementine, these keyhole satellites that were launched by NASA, since 1991, STS-38, keyhole 11 went up, KH-11 satellites, they pick up the intelligence and send it back to HARP. Okay? That's the feedback circuit. You follow me? Now, as far as earthquakes, that's a different deal. Okay, first of all, you got to realize that, inside your brain, there's electrolytes. They create a field that go down into your spinal cord. Your spinal cord then generates electromagnetic fields because of the flow of energy between the neurons, of 72,000 wires going through your field, and that creates an auric field or electromagnetic field with harmonics clearing the microwave about your body. Okay, so now everybody generates that field, and the Tibetans call the summation of that field the anima mundi. And so what happens is, let's look at the field. Well, the average person maybe in New Zealand or Australia or America is a positive thinking person. But when you get into these countries like Libya and all these terroristic nations, you have more negative fields. These guys want to kill all of us, where all of the stuff going on. That power of those negative fields is stronger than the power of the positive fields. How would you suggest that? When people don't have a fear of terrorism worldwide, then they have succumbed to us. Meanwhile, we have to go through, detectors, we got to go through body pats, all of this stuff because we're paranoid of what these terrorists are doing. And the height of the paranoid is when some lady comes in at 90 years old in a wheelchair and they want to throw her out of the wheelchair and pat her down like she's a bomb or something. That's the insanity that's gone to, okay? That goes up through the Earth's magnetic field, the Earth's field, and it goes into space. Okay. Meanwhile, we have a thing called the Jupiter effect. That is where Jupiter, Mars, all these planets line up and send an energy down into the sun, which creates a gravitational feedback to balance the orbital frequencies and all of that. When that summation field goes past the Earth is not in harmony with the other planets. You don't see, terrorism on Mars or Jupiter. It's only here. So that puts a big ripple, a big spike into the field that goes down into the sun. When that spike hits the sun, it creates what's called a solar flare. A solar flare can come out 2 or 3 million miles. That creates solar wind. Solar wind comes smashing back to the Earth at millions of miles per second. Very fine, but very great velocity. That hits the Van Allen radiation belt, which protects the Earth. The Van Allen radiation belt acts like a rectifier, slows it down, but it puts a lot of amperage on it. Comes down through the North Pole, we see it as the Aurora Borealis, and then comes down around the entire Earth, pushing on the tectonic plates. So every time there's a spike in a solar flare, it puts pressure on the plates. That gives you earthquakes. Then it goes down through the bottom of the Earth, out through the South Pole, blowing a hole out through the ozone layer. That's how earthquakes work. That's where they come from, and that's what it's all about. HARP is tuned into that. They can play with it, but they can't control it.
I see. Well, that's one hell of a roundabout for the earthquake. We'll pick up right here where we left off, and when we come back from the bottom now of the break. I gotta admit, I put up the information as far as when it came to HARP was transmitted out. I put it up on the website, all of their data. It's just highlighted with the dates, with the stations, and correlating with the earthquakes. Have a look for yourself. www.WPRTradio.com. We'll be back right after this. Dr. Fred Bell is my guest tonight. We'll get into even more when we return. PRT Radio. And of course the earthquakes, massive earthquakes in Japan, and of course here in Christchurch. Although the one in Christchurch, New Zealand, was not as strong as
what they're doing. I mean, they're removing.
Absolutely.
Well, if you start looking at that, that's the orchestration of the revelation. And, that's what they're doing. I mean, they're removing, first in America, they took, first thing was to take God out of the currency, God off the Pledge of Allegiance, God off everything. Now, I'm not saying what God is, but God is a metaphor for everybody to believe in that doesn't believe in anything or wants to believe in something and not sure what it is, and that gives you a direction of thought, and that gives you a harmony, and so a unity. And that's how we ended up leaving England and coming over here to America, and your country too. I mean, so that's the first step. The next thing is to start removing historical documents, and that's going on now. The removal of documents of history shows people. Everybody. The wise man says, "He who does not know history repeats itself." And so you can see all of that. I mean, Atlantis wasn't a big continent. It went down 12,000 years ago to earthquakes. You're still fighting over whether Atlantis is off the coast of Spain or down in Bimini Islands, but it's a moot point. It's probably all of the above. So you can, from my point of view, it's just the people that are behind it are a group out of Britain called Tavistock. Tavistock is a worldwide foundation. They control RAND. They control the one world order that H.W. Bush talked about. Tavistock. So I mean, I don't know how familiar you are. I wrote about it in my book, but that's the group in England. Go to their website and you'll see what they do, and it's pretty impressive because they always these companies put great websites up. Oh boy, do they put them up! It's all propaganda, though. Yeah.
Well, I found it very interesting that just weeks before the uprising in Libya, Gaddafi's son toured the United States under the internship of a company called AECOM. And he was given a tour of ports and military academies and everything else. And then he started looking into AECOM's background, exactly their infrastructure and their involvement in development and energy and so on and so forth, and there's huge interest in the Middle East. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, after he returns back to Libya, we have this big uprising, and now he's possibly dead. I don't know. I'm not buying it. I think there's more to that story than what we can piece together.
Well, Libya, like Iraq, Iran, they're all oil-producing countries.
Sure.
And that's the bottom line. I mean, it's the black gold. For example, in Iraq, Bush during the Bush Jr., during the first time around of his presidency, his dad bought 65 tankers. They took these tankers and they hold thousands of gallons, several hundreds of millions of dollars worth of black crude, and they load them off the port there, off the coast. And of course, the military is providing a cover so they can load these boats up, and they haul the oil up and they bring it back to Texas and they dump it back into ground from Iraq, back into the ground. That's where it is now. And there's billions and billions of dollars of oil, this crude oil, that's been brought up and pumped back into the ground. It ain't going nowhere. It's where it came from in the first place. And I read some articles in Iraq, a long time ago, about 2 years ago. Oh, we got, billions and billions of gallons of oil are missing. Wonder where they went. It was in the newspapers over there. And if you remember, we promised Iraq when we went into the war, okay, we're going to take care of you. We're going to make this a beautiful country with your oil money. We haven't spent 10 cents on them, The Halliburton, which is Cheney's group, has gotten paid to do some basic engineering projects to keep the electricity going and the water flowing.
That's a very good job, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's what they've done. And
contracted to do.
And so now here we go to Libya, and we have the Article 723 of the which was violated by Obama, who is now covering his little butt because he's saying, okay, who authorized him without Congress to send in the first night 134 cruise missiles at the cost of
top of the hour, so we're going to take our quick break.
Okay, we're ready.
Time is up, and it's up to Democrats.
Blood and out. Okay, so angel dust starts going into the fat cells. $11,000 out, or $3 billion. I mean, how $1 billion was it? $30 billion.
The uprising in Libya.
And that's how we ended up leaving England and coming over here. to America and your country too. I mean, so that's the first step. The next thing is to start removing historical documents.
Excuse the glitches. This is a brand new system I had to build, and all the new audio chipsets are full of Chinese crap built into them, so you can't do what I'm used to doing without a pain in the butt.
Who does not know history repeats itself.
Excuse me.
And so you can see all of that. I mean, Atlantis wasn't a big continent. It went down 12,000 years ago to earthquakes. You're still fighting over whether Atlantis is off the course, the coast of Spain or down in Bimini Islands, but it's a moot point. It's probably all of the above. So you can, from my point of view, it's just the people that are behind it are a group out of Britain called Tavistock. Tavistock is a worldwide foundation. They control RAND. They control the one world order that H.W. Bush talked about. Tavistock. So I mean, I don't know how familiar you are. I wrote about it in my book, but that's the group in England. Go to their website and you'll see what they do, and it's pretty impressive because they always these companies put great websites up. Oh boy, do they put them up! It's all propaganda, though. Yeah.
Well, I found it very interesting that just weeks before the uprising in Libya, Gaddafi's son toured the United States under the internship of a company called AECOM. And he was given a tour of ports and military academies and everything else. And then he started looking into AECOM's background, exactly their infrastructure and their involvement in development and energy and so on and so forth, and their huge interest in the Middle East. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, after he returns back to Libya, we have this big uprising, and now he's possibly dead. I don't know. I'm not buying it. I think there's more to that story than what we can piece together.
Well, Libya, like Iraq, Iran, they're all oil-producing countries.
Sure.
And that's the bottom line. I mean, it's the black gold. For example, in Iraq, Bush during the Bush Jr., during the first time around of his presidency, his dad bought 65 tankers. They took these tankers and they hold thousands of gallons, several hundreds of millions of dollars worth of black crude, and they load them off the port there, off the coast. And of course, the military is providing a cover so they can load these boats up, and they haul the oil up and they bring it back to Texas and they dump it back into ground from Iraq, back into the ground. That's where it is now. And there's billions and billions of dollars of oil, that's crude oil, that's been brought up and pumped back into the ground. It ain't going nowhere. It's where it came from in the first place. And I read some articles in Iraq, a long time ago, about 2 years ago. Oh, we got, billions and billions of gallons of oil are missing. Wonder where they went. It was in the newspapers over there. And if you remember, we promised Iraq when we went into the war, okay, we're going to take care of you. We're going to make this a beautiful country with your oil money. We haven't spent 10 cents on them, The Halliburton, which is Cheney's group, has gotten paid to do some basic engineering projects to keep the electricity going and the water flowing.
They're doing a very good job, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's what they've done. And
contracted to do.
And so now here we go to Libya, and we have the Article 723 of the which was violated by Obama, who is now covering his little butt because he's saying, okay, who authorized him without Congress to send in the first night 134 cruise missiles at the cost of $30 billion or $3 billion. I mean, how billion dollars was it? They're $30 million a piece to the math into Libya. Who authorized that? Congress didn't. So there's a violation. There's senators that want to impeach Obama right now for that. He's saying, this is the United Nations, blah blah blah. He's sidestepping it, but I mean, and by the way, I've got his birth certificate here. From Libya. I mean, not from Libya, but from where he was. Yeah, from Kenya. What happened was his mother she's from Wichita, Kansas, I believe. I don't have the birth certificate in front of me. She was down there. She was married to Obama's father, who's a Kenyan. They were both going to school. She's out swimming in the ocean, and all of a sudden she starts to have a miscarriage or premature labor. So they had to rush her into the hospital there, the Mamburi Hospital or whatever it is. She has the kid. She couldn't fly. And then 4 days later, after she has Obama, and I even have a picture of his footprint on the birth certificate. Then they fly over to Hawaii to get a statement of birth. That's not a birth certificate; it's a statement of birth. So here in America, we don't even have a legal president anymore because we have fascism. You know.
That's right. I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. In fact, it is really interesting as well the fact that Obama worked for one company his entire life. It turns out to be a CIA front that the White House press department told the reporters that if anyone asks about this particular company, they will be expelled from the White House press group permanently.
Yeah, well,
so, no one approached it. So that's very, very interesting. This guy came out of nowhere. CIA plant, I believe so, 100%.
Yeah, I could read you the 149 sub-projects of the CIA, like projects where they built safe houses in prostitution to, you know, get Johns in and drug them up for experimentation. I mean, I got 149 of them documented in my book. I used to call on ITEC back in Boston. I didn't know ITEC. Richard Goshorn was a former, you know, in World War II or Korean War, a pilot that, you know, paratrooper and pilot. I didn't know Richard Goshorn worked for the CIA till later, and he was making the cameras for ITEC, which went into the U-2 and beyond. And they were one of my clients. So I used to call and up in the Bay Area. There's the Hyatt up there in Palo Alto, the Hyatt Regency. I used to party there. That was a CIA headquarters meeting place when I was working up there. I mean, I was so surprised how many companies that I called on when I had my consulting company, over 2,000 companies that I called on, were CIA projects. It was amazing. Now I know, but I didn't know then, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I do have a list somewhere here in my file archives that identifies all of the known CIA fronts and the corporations and companies that the names of which they operated under. And ironically enough, the Bank of America is the bank of the CIA, which then you start looking at some of the things that have been going on with Bank of America, what they've been doing to their loan holders and people that had mortgages through them. It is quite telling. Let me ask you this: MK Ultra. I mean, this is a project that there's a lot of secrecy still around it. In fact, getting an interview with the head of MK Ultra is quite a gauntlet. You have to go through several lawyers and everything else of what you're allowed and not allowed to ask, and so on and so forth. What can you tell me about MK Ultra and present day operation?
Well, you know, today it's different. I mean, you want me to go through some of the projects and give you some of the budgets and what happened? I can do that. Okay, because I can show you up to for mind control. Number 3, this is number 3.
This is all in the Inside Track book by Dr. Fred Bell.
Bureau of Narcotics, top secret, $8,875. His project in Alan C.
I mean, this is a
Narcotics, top secret, $8,875. His project in MK Ultra was the construction of a safe house for prostitution. And then John Mulholland, self-employed, 1953, $4,000 some odd dollars, delivery of substances and field operations. And then we go into University of Denver, Alan Sears in 56, $12,000. Hypnosis experiments, including recall of hypnotically acquired information by very specific signals. You go in, and then you go into this one, number 11, 1953, $11,000, Abrus Procterius toxin. They're looking at toxins, you know, drugging people and killing people. You know, in number 17 at the University of Denver in Minnesota, $29,000 for LSD metabolism under Harold Hodge. And I mean, this is just, and then number 47, Carl Pfeiffer, New Jersey Neuroscientific Institute, Emory University, Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. That's where they brought the prisons. It's $45,555, 22 cents, LSD testing. You know, that's where they started doing angel dust. Angel dust came in the early 60s. number 74, Carl Rogers again, University of Wisconsin, 58, 15,000 biological correlations of emotion in psychotherapy clients.
Right.
It just goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, some of the data that has come out from those experiments had been used in different pharmaceutical drugs research, such as, let's take Prozac, for example. At one point, when Prozac was first hitting the scene, there were suggestions of actually putting this stuff in the drinking water, much like what they do with fluoride, which if you look and research the history behind fluoride, you see how it was used in communist Russia to make the populace more pliable. Add in a drug like Prozac, and of course we see this with children and different individuals. When they start taking these psychological drugs, things go bad. We have a hell of a lot more of what I mentioned before, of guys walking into places, of kids walking into their schools, killing everybody, shooting everybody, and them themselves. These are on the rise, and psychological drugs are more and more commonplace. You even see them in commercials when you're sitting there watching TV in the middle of the night.
Yeah, do you want me to explain how these things work?
Please do.
Okay. First, simple idea of how they work, okay? You go into a bar, you're a fairly straight person. At the end of the day, you're meeting your buddies. You know better than to drink too much because the cops are all over the place looking for DUI.
Sure.
So you sit down and you have a glass of wine, and you hit .02, on the sobriety chart. Okay, .02. Okay, that says, okay, I know I'm at .02. I weigh 180 pounds, and .02, I've had one drink. I can do another one. So now you're at .04. Okay. Well, the brain, the alcohol starts acting like a formaldehyde on the brain, and it starts shutting down the sensory points that give common sense feedback to the dangers of what the body can do. It just goes away. Because,
that's right.
So by the time you're at drink 3, you're probably .07, and now you think you're bulletproof. Well, hell, I can do 2 more and then go home. So now you're at .1 or .12, and you drive out and you get a DUI. Okay?
Right.
Okay, the way psychoactive drugs, SSRI drugs work is the same way, except there's a difference. Okay? The way angel dust phencyclidine works, it's called a hypnotic. As alcohol is a hypnotic, but it's a short-term alcohol that's distributed, it's broken down by the kidneys and the liver. Angel dust is not. Angel dust goes into the fat cells of the body. Alcohol does not go to the fat cells of the body. It just goes into the blood and out. Okay, so angel dust starts going into the fat cells of the blood, Effects or Prozac, any of those. So then it goes into the cells. So when you first start taking it, it's the same effect on the brain, but much slower because it's not in the blood, it's in the fat cells. So it starts to build and build and build. Same hypnotic thing, same bulletproof thing. But the bottom line is with the adolescents, kids in high school, and now and a case in point, you take a kid in high school that's had 4 or 5 beers, he could go out and do anything because his brain is not developed. He doesn't have that reasoning power built in yet. Whereas an adult has it, but now this drug just creeps up over it and just covers that reasoning power up over 6 or 8 or 10 weeks versus 2 or 3 or 4 drinks in one evening. You follow what I'm saying? Same effect because it's in the fat. The fat works with the blood, and so the blood is now being intoxicated by this drug over a long period of time. And so pretty soon you get to a point where you're really high on this stuff, and now you start to go into the beta, alpha, delta state. You start going into the delta state, and you start daydreaming and going into a trance. And this trance state is what psychiatrists want you to go into to forget about, your fight with your wife, your bad thing in your bad marriage, your bad work thing, which you're there for, you're taking the drugs for. That's what the drug is there for, but it doesn't solve the problem. It goes beyond that. So now what happens is it goes into the dark side. So now let's say go back to the bar, and you take a person that would be great on say at .1, he's a fine person, but now you give him 5 shots of tequila and he hits .2 or .3. Now his animal nature comes up, his animosity comes up, and he can't control it, and he goes out and kills somebody because he's screwed up on alcohol. Same thing happens on these drugs. These drugs were started back in Hitler's time with IG Farben. If you look at IGB Farben, which became Merck, which became several other companies in America, at the Nuremberg trials, half of those people were up on the dock, for war crimes, all got, put away, dismissed, all came to America and started Roche and Merck and all these companies. Exactly, that's the background. It's the same thing that Hitler started, and it's very sophisticated. Then you take that and use satellite harassment, where they take millimeter waves and they put 2 beams into your brain from space, and they start really messing you up, and now you're going to go crazy, and they're going to control you. You're going to be insane, insomnia. I mean, I have so many people call me with all these strange problems that we help. We're able to help people with this, but this is where it's going, and this is where they want it to go. I mean,
and the power of the media. The media is a very interesting a medium, because the power of the media can really set the mental state for the masses that are succumb to the information that's being put out. I mean, if you watch the news, you're bombarded with bad news constantly, things that don't make you feel all that great. You may have 1 or 2 feel-good stories in there, but the majority of it is to make you really feel hopeless, and this is pretty widespread. They give a glimmer of hope in there somewhere, but the majority of it is what bleeds leads, in a sense. That's the mentality in the media.
Well, let me explain something.
You make these drugs, you make all of these things together, you're asking for a bad recipe.
Yeah, well, let me explain about, in my book, on one of the chapters, I have an opening statement on one chapter. Thomas Colby, ex-CIA director. CIA controls the media. Okay, you remember about a month ago in Beebe, Arkansas, 4,000 birds drop out of the sky, and a bunch of... Okay, so what was that? Everybody said, a lightning strike, this and that. That's the media. Okay, what was it? Well, guess what? Here's what it was. Phosgene gas was brought from Iraq by Bush and put in Beebe, Arkansas. And I'm down there. I've been in these facilities. I know what I'm talking about. The idea was to drain the phosphine gas into the ground to get rid of it. We should have gotten rid of it a long time ago. It was one of the chemical warfare things that supposedly didn't exist in Iraq, but it did. Okay? So here they are. So then the next thing they do is they take phosphine gas, and I saw pictures of it. I can actually put it up on the website, on my website. They have a 737 that has these like Venturi things right above the wings on both sides. It has these kind of look like reverse horns, like a megaphone exhaust pipe on a motorcycle, 8 or 10 of them on each side. They sprayed a bunch of birds down in Beebe, Arkansas, in that area that night, and it causes a respiratory heart failure. All the birds drop dead. Remember that people were out, if you remember the news pictures, they're out in hazmat suits gathering the birds. Okay? That's right. All this information from phosgene gas didn't come from the American media. It came from, guess what? Vladimir Putin put it out because he knew, because he was watching this, he was tracking this gas, he knew what was going on, he's ex-KGB. He was so mad at America for even possessing this and not sharing it with the world community that we had phosgene gas and we're trying to get rid of it. Now we're distributing it and playing with it. So Vladimir Putin put that out on the European network. I got a hold of it and brought it to America, blasted it on my radio shows, and still the American media won't touch that story with a 10-foot pole.
Well, here's what's interesting is that phenomenon of the birds dropping dead in mass forms started. Yeah. It started. We got the view of it there in Arkansas, although it was happening worldwide. In fact, I have in my hands here a newspaper article that was printed in the New Zealand newspaper here. That even here in New Zealand there has been mass bird deaths, laying dead everywhere. Yeah. And ironically enough, just before the Christchurch earthquake, I was along a beach on the far south end of New Zealand, and there was a huge storm that rolled through just a week before the earthquake hit, and washed up on the beach the following day was an enormous amount of pufferfish and jellyfish. It was as if though a school of pufferfish got caught up in this storm. But talking with the locals at that particular time, they said they had never, ever, ever seen anything like this whatsoever. Now, we'll get more into this here after the break. We're at the top of the hour. We have to take a little break here. So, stay where you are. deaths and the strange thing that happened just before the Christchurch quake, as well as we'll open up the phone lines here, half past the top of the next hour, and we'll take your calls. Number to call is 702-751-0309, and if you are in
a flu from a 3-year high in February, reversing experts to stabilize his wife.
Been around a lot of strange birds, and after they get to know you, it takes time. Sometimes it takes up to a year to get to know you. But when then they're your best buddy for life. I mean, you can't beat it.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, tell me. So here we have this thing happening all over the world.
Right.
It's a curious thing. Now, I wanted to jump into this, and I want to remind the listeners because I'm going to open up the phone lines here. Again, the number to call is, if you're in the States, it's 702-75.
Clarity on it. So that means it. And I realize I don't know anything, but in order to realize you don't know anything, you get a picture of what it is. You know what I mean? It's like you walk up to the Titanic before it sunk, and you say, that's a big boat. How does it work? I don't know, but there's a Titanic. I don't know, but it's there. You know what I mean? So with time travel, in my first experiments, and today we're not there. We're into something beyond that, but I'll explain that in a minute. But in those days, what we did is we built a machine that accelerated the feedback frequencies between the electron and the body, which, you know, if you look at the electron around the body's oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon. The carbon atom is the structure of the body. The nitrogen atom is the form of the body, like protein. The oxygen is the animation of the form, you know, like oxygen animates. And the hydrogen atom is consciousness. So we went into the study of consciousness and the hydrogen atom. We played there. And we were able to accelerate the hydrogen atom up to a faster orbital rate in the body than it's normally used to, which then accelerated the consciousness of the body and the body itself physically into forward dimensions. And what we found out was, in this machine that we did, that we developed, and there's lots of pictures of in my book, it took us maybe a millisecond or maybe a nanosecond or a few nanoseconds, because judging the speed of light, it's in the nanosecond range, and we can measure that. It took us to a point when we observed nothing. There was no creation anymore. So we realized that creation did not exist other than being here now. There was no future. Now, looking back at what we had the physical plane acceleration into nowhere. Now, what would the future be? Well, we would go back to the astral plane, which is our dream state, and we would say, okay, there's certain elements going on here, certain elements going on here simultaneously. That would breed itself into what we would call the future. The bottom line, there's no future. The way to look at that is a comet going through space. It's got a big tail, but the front of the comet going into the black void, there's nothing there. That was our first experiment, our first experience.
Yeah.
Later on, when we got into developing devices like our projector and our projector that we make, we got into quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement took us into the fact that everything is an illusion. You look at David Bohm, who died in 1992, a great physicist, who said everything's a hologram. A hologram is an event that, regardless of how you divide it down, it's the same event. And so we started looking at holographic physics, and so we started working in our technology and developing devices that work in the hologram, which is called quantum, in the process of getting to the hologram, it's called quantum tunneling, and then it's called quantum entanglement when you get there. Then we developed a device that physicists is called SPDC, spontaneous parametric down conversion. That's where we'd send a photon of light into a device that would split your thoughts into an event, and when the event and the thoughts came together, you get a manifestation. We've been very successful marketing products in that area. SPDC was first demonstrated by Alan Aspect in France, where he sent two photons opposite directions at the speed of light into the machines that, like you take a pair of sunglasses that are polarized, you can turn them one way, you can see through them, two pairs, okay? Same thing. That's how these devices work, these optical polarizers work. He sent them in two directions. He had what's called a classic connection, meaning a speed of light connection to his laboratory, and he had two non-classic connections to two targets. As he sends one photon in one direction and one photon in the other direction, he has the columnizers, the things that are going to read him, polarized to only accept a certain polarity, let's say positive of a photon. So all of a sudden, as they get to the target, the one going to the right, instead of going one to the right, one to the left, one to the right, he shifts the polarity on it. So that means it should crash, and the other one should go through. Instantaneously, the other one switched polarity, neither one could go through. The lens is the collimator. So that was demonstrated by our own. So that they call that teleportation in physics. So now, in one of our devices called the projector, okay, went to the patent office 2-3 years ago. In May, early in March this year. We got a call like March 1st from the patent office. I wanted to call this device the projector, the nuclear projector. The patent office says, no, you can't call it that. I says, what do you mean? I says, you got the drawings, everything is there. And I mean, this is a lady at the patent office, very, very high lady. And I said to my attorney, I says, what do you mean they're changing the name of my patent? I mean, I don't, what's that about? It's not what's the name of it. You could call it the hair scratcher if you wanted. They said, no, they had an experience with it. They want to call it the light display device. Well, we're talking photons. I said, I don't mind that. So on March 16th of last year, 2010, we got a patent. I think it's 600 and some odd thousand. I got the number in the other room if you want it. You can look it up. And we got it for a light display device because the United States Patent Office actually had an experience with what I'm talking about tonight on this radio to all your people out there, had an experience. And they were so prejudiced, they made and I have one of the largest patent attorneys in the world, they made us go with that name, which I don't care, If you want, I'll go get the number at the next break.
Actually, I'm more curious of what was the experience that they had?
They never told me. I don't know. They never told me. It became classified as far as I'm concerned. They never told me. But it obviously had something to do with light and something with the transmutation of light versus thought. That's all I know. Other than that, they wouldn't release any information, but they ironclad said, we will not issue this patent unless you call it that. I said, no contest. Yeah.
The light display device. Which is fine in itself, to call it the light display device. But the name itself, to me, downplays what you say that the machine can do itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, but we're dealing with the government. I mean, for the government to see the light, wouldn't that be that's a step up? The device. Exactly. If you see, I can't give my clients out, but a lot of my clients, your listeners would know who they are. Most of them, a lot of them, because they're well-known clients, and they don't spend, they don't invest into these kind of devices unless they get results. And then we have a program that brings them up to the big pieces, and.
All right, and that was Dr. Bell. First interview was with Pete, former air traffic controller on 9/11 and avionics, and all the impossible fables that they've thrown into our psyches. And the second interview, we'll just say it was out of New Zealand. We'll keep it that way. Keep it friendly there. But, Dr. Bell, rest in peace, man. We miss you. Sorry about the audio. I'm working off a new gig, new setup here. And you guys have no idea. You think you're getting better gimmicks because they're getting cheaper and they go faster and they look prettier. But guess what? They've got more and more things built into those devices that are going against humanity and your free will. And they are spying on you and controlling your mind. Okay? So quit being popular with the stupid gimmicks. Okay? You don't need any of it. Turn off your damn TV. Alright? And we appreciate you here at Freedom Slips because we couldn't roll month to month without you. We're all volunteers here. Producers, hosts, engineers, the owner. The only thing that the money goes to is to pay for all infrastructure. Electricity, bandwidth, phone lines, servers, cetera, et cetera. So keep it coming. We still have about $520 short for the month and only 8 days. So hit us up at freedomslips.com or revolution-radio.com. And a couple bucks here and there, you know, from each of you, and we could probably get it all done for prepaid 2 months. Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't have to bitch at any of you. But I'm not bitching. I appreciate it. We all do. We don't have this opportunity. This is not going to be given to us again. This is like the last foundation that we have to stand on if we really want to see any kind of inflicted change. If not, save your breath. Go have a drink or 10. Go to sleep. Take your pills. But yeah, this has been Rectify. Check out my show. It's late Monday nights, early Tuesday mornings. You're on the west coast of the United States, Pacific time. That would be 11 p.m. Monday. And it would be 2 a.m. on Tuesday if you're on East Coast time. So, yeah, it's the Gray Zone. Check us out. But yeah, you're going to be hearing music soon. I want to thank Justin Time. He's our prime engineer for letting us do this impromptu clip set. Thanks a lot, Justin Time. And again, Nighthawk, happy birthday, brother. I hope your party goes without any problems and everybody out there has a safe and good time. Everybody have a great weekend. Rectify out.